and across Capital One alike. Capital has a very mature business network established, and we have consulted with them so that we could leverage the opportunities to benefit from their events as well as our events. So this opportunity will grow those relationships and strengthen the network opportunities that we have. Our chapter leads were part of the original generation of the Women's Business Network. It was myself, Stacey, Brooke, and Paige. Very excited to move forward and be able to show you the WBN ERG and the events that we've implemented for the balance of this year.
Thank you, Stacey. Yeah, sure. Any questions that anyone has on the Women's Business Network? Okay. Sorry, what was that page? Well, okay. All right. The next thing we want to talk about is there is a Dress for Success event going on, sponsored Women's Business Network. And that started this week, and it runs through this Sunday, December 11th. There are a number of donation locations in Virginia, Texas, Louisiana, and Pennsylvania. There was an email announcement that went out about that earlier this week. The Women's Business Network is proud to be supporting the Dress for Success organization. It's a rewarding way to give back to the community and help by creating gently used professional women's clothing and accessories that go to women who are getting back on their feet and re-entering the career or the corporate career. And any questions on that? Okay. Okay. So please stand. We're having some technical difficulties with the WebEx. I'm trying to share the presentation. And, okay. So we're going to go forward without our slide deck. So I'm going to through and introduce our three presenters. So on the account today, or on presentation today on our panel, we have Coley McKay, who is the account director for the Workplace Solutions at WPS side of the account. He is based out of New York. We also have very nicely joining us on the phone from the West Coast is Brandon Orlando, who's account director for network management. And we also have Paige Chavone, who's the account lead for the data centers based here in Redmond. And what we'll, without further ado, is get into the questions for the panel. And so first in, Brandon, I'm going to direct you and feel free to also, as you start to answer, give a little more of an introduction of yourself. But as a manager, what do you want to read in the self-assessment of an individual contributor?
Okay, thank you for including me on the panel. I'm very excited to be here. 16th cycle of PMP, so I think I'll have a lot to offer here today. And you know, thanks for the introduction, and just wanted to thank you, Paige, Brooke, Amy, Stacey, Joe, for your leadership in the Women's Business Network. It's great to hear how it's evolving and maturing, and all the great things that you guys are going after. So you know, kudos to you guys. Your question on what I would want to read from individual contributors. What is fact-based and concise, right, in telling our story about our goals. So the way I thought I would go about it today is put us in that individual contributor seat, you know, as we all are, right, as we all have to, you know, fill our IPMPs each cycle. And what I say is start with just reviewing your goals and let them sink in a bit. Hard to just start typing and remember all the things that took place during the year. So start by just rereading your goals. Have a think about what you want to say before you write them. My thoughts in each with bullets that I want to make. And I would say do this over a course of a couple days or even longer. Usually takes me about a week when I start to when I finish. We'll do that over a couple of days or a week or whatever suits you best. But the point here is you just sit down and start typing. You need to really think about what you're going to write and the points that you want to make. So going back to my original point of trying to be concise and fact-based when articulating your story, I would try to eliminate as much of the subjectivity. We need to be as objective as possible. Yourself in terms of saying things like, I think I did well, or I did a great job this year, managing my projects, and just adding it there. Wouldn't this sound better? Managed 12 projects this year that totaled $70 million in spend. Those 12 were delivered on time, 12 delivered under budget or on budget, and I had average client satisfaction 90% on each of my project deliveries this year. That's the specificity that we're looking for as managers. Really want to try to tell that story. Why did you perform well? What did you do specifically? How did you perform the task? Citing as many facts as possible. Use client and peer feedback when appropriate. That's totally fine in these things. Instead of saying, I think I made the client happy, we'll make a quote from the client that you can include. I'd say, really to kind of, not up, but we want to make it easy on the manager. I mean, this is your review. This is your performance. Easy for your manager to understand the point you're making and do that in an objective manner. And just final points before we leave this section, Catherine. Okay, remember the term uptick. That's the term that's used within JLL vernacular within the management ranks. And so does an uptick. Well, an uptick is as you go above and beyond your day job, so to speak. Did you participate on a committee? What were your contributions to the team and to the client that went above and beyond your day job? How you're going to get credit for exceptional performance. So remember that as you're going into writing your review. And then lastly, I would just say one other thing. We put a lot of effort of trying to be specific with our goals when we set them at the beginning of the year. But goals change. Things do change over the course of the year. If you're reading a goal that you established back in March and April, and all of a sudden it may not have the same meaning come December when you're writing a review, go back to the category that it's in. Providing exceptional client service or growth of the company, and just to get to the spirit of what that goal was trying to achieve in the year. Don't feel like just because it may not be as relevant. But just try to get to the spirit, because there's nothing wrong with things changing. But when you're writing, try to make that effort to get to the spirit of the goal.
Great, thank you, Brandon. So I'm going to summarize. Your main point was to be objective and talk about, instead of I did a great job, I managed 12 projects, 11 out of 12 were on time for X million dollars, et cetera, that type of objectivity. Also to make sure you note any upticks in your performance where you went above and beyond your normal day job. And also, as goals change over the year, reflect back on the spirit of the goal. And if you didn't accomplish exactly that, did you do something along the same line there? So, Brandon. I'm going to ask Paige and Coley to also chime in. So, Paige, is there anything you'd add to that for an individual contributor?
Yeah, Catherine. I think one thing I'd like to add a lot of my team is comprised of engineers, a lot of our team as a whole on the account. And so I think when it comes to the engineering aspect, again, focusing on some of that quantitative stuff in terms of worker, whether it's response time, all that kind of stuff, in addition to client feedback. I know that our team does a great job out there for the Capital One clients. So any specific examples you can give of that is helpful. And I think response to sort of critical events or quick response times, whether it's on the engineering side or the professional side, when a client comes with a request that needs immediate attention, being able to reprioritize and deliver for the client, I think is always really helpful to highlight. And additionally, I would say, always helpful to highlight training that kind of went above and beyond what asked of you. So whether it's training to further your development in your current role or training that you're doing to maybe develop in other areas of JLL, professional development or knowledge, all of that, I think it's helpful to specifically highlight in your review so that it reminds your manager of the accomplishments that you had throughout the year.
Thanks. And do we have a line?
Yeah, I'm here, Catherine. I agree with everything that I agree with everything that Brandon and Paige said. And from an individual contributor standpoint, what I would encourage everybody to do is, be aware of the objectives that are in your IPMP, and kind of arrange your comments to address your performance against those objectives, but take a broader look as well, and be aware of other account and facility or program specific related objectives of the account, and whether they're written in your particular agreement or not, it's absolutely appropriate to include commentary on how you're supporting those other broader initiatives to kind of help show your awareness of the larger objectives of the account.
Cool. So the next question, Paige, you started to touch on this in your follow-up to Brandon about the critical events and quick response. You have a lot of engineers on your team. So what specifically would someone on the facility side who's in an engineering type role have to add in their IPMP?
Yeah, I think anything, again, sort of specifically in response to work order, client satisfaction, specific expertise that you have that you help the team with. You are helping develop other team members with that expertise, or it's sort of, at least from an engineering perspective, an electrical field or mechanical field. And again, the big things that we do to deliver for our clients is innovate. So examples, things that you've come up with that maybe is a best practice. It's been adopted by other teams throughout the account, and really innovate whether or not you submit it to our engineering committee, and helps us deliver at a higher level for the client. A lot of this, on a day-to-day basis, it's a part of our job. It's part of what we do as JLL, is we want to continually improve, increase efficiencies, deliver for the client. And a lot of times it's about capturing the items that you did for the team, the suggestions that you made, whether it was a cost save, and like that. We have some lighting projects on the data center side that have created cost efficiencies for the client. All those things, again, specific examples and quantitative, I think is always very, very helpful.
Thank you, Paige. I'm going to ask Brandon and Coley to follow up on that as well, and I want to kind of go to pull us a thread, as one of my clients used to say, about that lighting project and the cost efficiencies and savings. And in my individual contributor days, I felt that if there was a big project and I was one of maybe 5 or 10 people on a team that implemented something that was a cost savings, then I would feel that, well, it's really my idea and I just, executed what happened. But, Brand, if you would address, my feeling now is that people should not be shy about taking credit that they participated on the team because your work at least helped accomplish that goal for the client. So Brandon, what else would you add to that, and talk to that, else would you add for engineers?
No, I agree with you, Catherine. I mean, one of the lines that I routinely use or encourage my people to use is the line, my contributions were in line with that of the team or the committee or the group that you're a part of. So I think everybody has a role on certain team projects, and so if successful, you should take credit. I mean, everybody's kind of pulling at the rope to hold on the same direction, and be shy about that. And a lot of what we do has to get done through group efforts, right? So if you feel you've done your role, you can look at your peers and say, I did my job and I contribute in whatever manner that means, and absolutely take credit for it. We're, what I would say is caution against be overextending that, but absolutely, and that just isn't even within our groups, right? I mean, there may be some things that we're doing on the client side that you may not even be aware of. So let's make sure that those get highlighted as well. I mean, there's things that we're doing in terms of meeting client strategic objectives, and maybe even participating in some things on their side that that should also come even this. I mean, Coley made a great point of not staying on script per se with your goals that are in your IPMP, to keep the perspective. And why I said in the beginning, really have a think about what you did over the year. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to go back to the beginning of the year when you're sitting down in December. So I think it's really critical that you start by reviewing your goals. You start about thinking about the year and really start to document what you want to get down on paper.
And Coley, what are your thoughts on the engineering side, self-assessment, what you would expect to see in that?
Yeah, I think everything is covered. I have nothing additional to add on that one.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up for Paige or Brandon, is there any particular concept would convey specific accomplishments for an engineer?
Yeah, I think there's metrics that are involved, especially in terms of on-time response, in terms of work orders, in terms of quantitative that you could put into that.
I mean, we've got certain KPIs on our side, on the maintenance completion time, just quality audits. I think it's about thinking about your tasks, how that's contributing. Hopefully, we've done a good job as a leadership team of connecting the dots back to our overall goals. And so, let's have a think about how your individual contributions are contributing to team goals, and articulate those through your IPMP.
Thank you. So we want to give some tips to in this panel today about working with your IPMP. And one of the tips that I give my team is that the IPMP tool itself can be a little bit finicky. So I was given this advice, I first joined LL as well, was that when you start typing those comments, and if you take Brandon's advice and you first read through your goals and you're jotting some notes down, to start with pen and paper, but also once you start typing them, it's often work in your favor to open a Word document and start typing them in a Word document on a computer. The IPMP tool, I have personally been typing away and thought I had an active login, and then went to save, and it said, oh, you've logged out of the system. So, and then you lose all that work, and you thought, I just did it so brilliantly, what I just did this past year, and you've lost and you can't remember what you said. So very good tip is to start in a Word document first, save early and often, and then when you're happy with it, then you open the IPMP tool and you're simply copying and pasting from the Word document into those boxes in the IPMP tool, and again, save early and often, as we say. And then I'm going to call to talk through this tip. We talked about IPMP becoming part of your permanent record at ALL. So, Cola, do you want to give us your thoughts, share your thoughts on that?
Sure. You know, I think just to piggyback on what you just said, really drive that home. I think each of us that are talking on this call have been in situations where we've really poured our thoughts and minds into, you know, writing a really articulate response for our own individual self-assessments, just to find that the web page did not save and you lost all of that information, right? It's happened to me multiple times, and over the years I've learned to, you know, open up a Word document, write it, and cut and paste it into the tool. So that is a huge tip that I think a lot of us have learned the hard way. So absolutely agree with that, Catherine. In terms of my view of the IPMP tool, absolutely. This is a permanent record of your performance as long as you're with the company. Right? Brendan said he's got 16 years worth of performance agreements in the system. I'm very similar. You can log into, you know, my record and see that all the performance, you know, assessments that I've had over the years since I've been with the company. It is quite regular for me to evaluate an employee that I don't know that's looking to transfer onto one of my accounts from another JLL account, for me to go to HR and say, hey, send a PDF version of the last 3 or 4 years of that person's IPM, and I will read through those, try to educate myself and get a better understanding of what that individual has done in their previous roles and what their manager's critique of that individual was. So for me, as everybody knows, I am like anti-IPMP. It's a really workload at the end of the year to put all these thoughts and try to summarize what you're doing into one document. But I really cannot stress the value of giving it the right amount of time and professionalism. I've had over the years people that just write the word complete or, you know, objective achieved. No punctuation, no capitals, no detail. And at the end of the day, you are not doing yourselves justice, right? Everybody works really hard all year. You have to be the one that sings your praises. They mentioned facts and figures. That always helps, right, where you can tie that into actual objectives. But articulate all the hard work and achievements that you did and take the time and you know, do yourself justice so that you know you're not just aligned with your direct manager, you're also building a permanent file of your achievements with this firm that are going to stay with you as long as you're an employee here.
That's great to know. Thank you. Brandon, anything you want to add to that or elaborate on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Coley. You know, something, I mean, you know, literally going back to the 16, 17 years that, you know, my record would be one of a facility manager, right? And so it is a permanent record. It is something that we should take as a, you know, pride, a professional pride, right, in authorship. Because at the end of the day, I'll just say, you know, you need to be able to tell your story and be, you know, viewing this as, you know, a record of your achievements. And it's also interesting to go back, how relevant this is, but it just is interesting to go back and look at things and how, you know, you're what have you, not that that's as relevant, but it is, it just gets to the permanency of this, and just that's, I think that what we're trying to get at here is, you know, for everybody, just really take the time to invest in this, do a good quality job, and you know, and tell your story, because at the end of the day, you want that story, and you know, and she gets full credit for what accomplishments you've achieved.
One of the things we talked about earlier were addressing the spirit of the goal, that a goal may have changed during the year. How can someone write up their IPMPs, like say the manager changed during the year and they did some really great work in the first part of the year, and that manager left, went to another assignment, and now they have to kind of, and maybe they've only had their new manager for a month or two. How do you address that and make sure the new manager is aware of all your great stuff that you've already done?
I think it starts with that conversation, right, and just be prepared for that conversation, and maybe going into the IPM team before you to that, sit-down session, the face-to-face session, you've had a conversation, and that new manager, some context and background. So I wouldn't wait for the kind of the review or the sit-down meeting, before that context is given. Hopefully, if that manager hasn't left the firm, you always have a reference point, right? You can always put that your legacy manager, so to speak, back into the contact with the new manager. Sometimes that is, the case. But I would start by just, again, this is why it's all about being prepared, reviewing your goals. If you see a potential challenge there, mitigate it by having a conversation. That would be my recommendation with your new manager.
Okay. And hey, anything that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I just really want to reiterate some of the things that Coley and Brandon said. I have the 16 years of experience with IPMPs that Brandon and Coley have, but in my short time on the account, I can say I have looked at these previous IPMPs from accounts. Dell is a great company where there's a lot of opportunity, not only within the Capital One account, but across other JLL accounts. And so the ability to look at someone's IPMP and get a feel for them outside of a resume is very helpful. And again, it speaks volumes. Me personally, I'm like a stickler for grammar and spelling and things like that. So I think that's what they're talking about when they say take professional pride in that. It really represents you within JLL to anyone else. And Catherine also talked about managers. Well, when a new manager comes on board, they can look at those IPMPs too, right? So that's the way they can use to get to know their team. Not only are they talking to you one-on-one, getting to know you, but take a look at the IPMPs, see what your team members have done past. And again, I think it just really represents the impact the system has. And it's good for sort of keeping track of your accomplishments year over year and really showing how you're improving as an employee in delivery for JLL.
So I have a few more questions that we'll move into now. And one of the things that many people may not be aware of is that the IPMP tool, when you write your assessment, self-assessment for your performance agreement, there is an attachment function on that. And I often encourage my teams to attach samples of their work, whether it's a PDF of a congratulatory email from the client, or if it's a PowerPoint presentation, something that was particularly impressive, that's really well received by the client. So, Brandon, I know you've used the attachment feature. So what sort of attachment do you find meaningful, and what's the right amount? Obviously, we don't want to see everything you've done over the past year, but what kind of attachments are meaningful and should someone look to highlight?
I think it's quality over quantity, Catherine, and I think use it for material and significant goals. In saying that, I would say examples would be even certifications. I mean that may be a material thing for somebody if they got their HVAC lines or what have you, or even any kind of some training that occurred. That links back to a specific goal. But I've used it for, career development as well, plans, KPI scorecards, depending on your level, obviously. Also in the past, have put together kind of summaries of my work, so whether that's cost savings or value engineering, so take that for instance, a value engineering one. So let's say that you contributed, I don't know, $500,000 worth of value engineering during the year. Maybe you put a quick list together of what that is, what's going to not, and this is your MP, so tell the story. It's nothing wrong with, and it's meant to be an aid, right? I mean, the attachment feature is meant to be an aid. So I would say, in terms of quantity, I don't know, I think, 2, 3, 4 attachments. You don't want to be putting 10 or 12, obviously, but I think use as an aid, and and just reference it within your comments that you've attached it to give the manager that background, and it's about making it as easy as possible for your manager to read through your accomplishments, and this is a way to make it easier for the manager. Just tell your
Thanks,
story.
Brandon.
Yep.
Thoughts on attachments?
Yeah, I think, listen, everyone that's on this call needs to realize that you each have your own style, and you need to incorporate that into what you're writing about your own accomplishments. I think there is no right answer, right? Brandon, myself, Paige, we all have different styles as managers, and we all have different expectations on how we like to see things. So there's going to be a constant evolution and need for each of you to adapt to your plan, to what account you're on, to what manager you're working for, and adjust to that appropriately as you're doing your performance agreements. For me specifically about attachments, over my 18+ IPMP agreements, I may have actually used the attachment feature like twice. And those 2 occasions were really large, specific accomplishments that I wanted to attach that file as a permanent record so I could reference it back years later. I can tell you as a manager, looking at my direct, IPMPs that, I have to review as a manager, too many attachments is overwhelming, right? We always say that there should be no surprises when sitting down getting your mid-year or your year-end review. And it comes from both directions, right? So the manager shouldn't be saying something to the employee that is going to surprise them relative to their good or constructive criticism about their performance. And it's the other way as well, right? The employee shouldn't be claiming something the manager is completely unaware of. A lot of that can be covered in the actual text of the agreement, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So for me, my preference is be super selective on what you're including in attachments. I don't see the document because obviously during the course of the year I would have already, kind of reviewed and seen it. When there's a value for you to attach it, go ahead and do that. But for my personal style, I don't need it to be able to, kind of complete your review.
I think, Coley, there might be some value when we talk about this being permanent record, though, if somebody did, you as the direct manager would have already seen the document during the course of the year. There may be some instances where somebody has some work that they're particularly proud of that they want to attach it. It becomes part of that permanent record. Okay. Anything you'd like to add?
I think for me, because as Catherine knows, and we were planning for this webinar, and I learned about attachments for the first time. So I think it's a good feature to use. And again, even this conversation around having it there as part of your permanent, I think it's great because it can go, for future potential roles as part of your IPMP record. It's like, hey, I brought this new thing to the account, and here's what it was. Points, so a good way to summarize this attachment.
Okay. So the next question I have goes back to Coley and to his comments on the attachments about being super selective, and I kind of chuckle because, of course, Coley is my direct manager. Coley, how much detail do you want to read, and does the self-assessment need to address every point in the performance agreement?
That comment about the attachments, Catherine, was directed right to you. So last attachments.
Okay, I figured that was.
I think for me, I've got a couple of kind of key points, and I'll kind of get through them quickly. Right, so when you're filling out your self-assessment as a manager versus an individual contributor, I think, number one, what I try to do is I'm presumptive in my response, and I always indicate whether I felt I met, exceeded, or did not meet the objective that was outlined for me. So in the very first line of the self-assessment I write for myself, I say, hey, I exceeded the objectives for this requirement, and here's why. I also encourage everybody, and I try to give to the team where they were instrumental in helping achieve an objective, but I don't shy away from taking ownership of management responsibilities that were part of my requirement to get that objective completed. So there's an element of, as a manager, there's certain things you do as an individual to get objectives met, and there's certain things that you have to manage where you're managing a group of people that are doing the actual physical work. And it's something you recognize both of them for yourself. The thing too, and I'll go through just a couple quick bullets here. I tend to prefer to keep it simple, right? I think every manager has, anywhere from, 2 to 10 direct reports. My preference, and again, this is my preference, I don't want to be reading through 5 paragraphs of text for every single objective that's in the IPMP. And I should do my self-assessments in a way that gets the key points out, gets the facts and figures out, gets the key high-level value-add things that I accomplished over the course of the year in a paragraph or 2. And I tend to heavily utilize bullets, right? I say, hey, I exceeded this objective, and here's a few examples why, and I might have 5 or 6 bullets. And it makes it easier on the eye to read and hone in on the things that you really accomplished. And that's just my style. I wanted to talk about, we talked a little bit about attachments and your praises and telling your story. Right, one of the things that I do over the years, and I've learned this over the years, is it's really hard to backtrack and think, okay, here are all the things that I did over the last 12 months. And what I do to help myself with that is I just create a simple folder on my email archive, and then there's something that is done or an acknowledgement that I get or the team gets, I save to that file, and then when it's time to write my self-assessment, I have 20 or 40 emails in there, and I can have a good recollection of the things that I felt were important at the time, and that helps me craft which of those things I actually want to include in the comments. Bullets and feedback, we heard that referenced earlier. I use that pretty frequently. If I get a client commenting on something, I don't feel the need to actually PDF it and attach it. I actually write the exact quote and who gave it to me, and put it into the comments of the IPMP. The kind of extra opportunities, so things like, and this applies to both manager and individual contributors, right? So we have the rewards and recognition committee, right? So if you're an individual that is receiving acknowledgement or is nominated, that's something I would include in my IPMP. We talked a little bit about certifications and things that you're doing from a training perspective. And again, these apply to both individual contributors and managers. So if you're out there doing different training initiatives or doing things to progress your professional career, these are all things that you want to tell your story with and make sure you're including in the comments.
Thank you, Coley. And I'm going to ask Paige, Coley brought up briefly talking about managers, and so how for a people manager, can you delve a little bit more into that, how a people manager should address the accomplishments of their team?
Yeah, Catherine, I think that's important because there's a number of people, hopefully, who are people managers. And so part of your success is the success of your team and your ability to help them grow and develop in their roles. So, and I think it goes back to one of the things we talked about at the very beginning in terms of what your goals and objectives are. And I think those should be sort of clearly, succinctly laid out if you are a people manager for your team's performance. I do think it's helpful to refer to some of the specific successes of your team, in addition to any efforts you have made to encourage their development, whether it's cross-training, opportunities, training events, anything of that nature. I think that's always real to highlight in terms of things that you've done for your team. In addition, I would add, as a people meeting, a lot of times some of our examples may be around managing vendors. So think about that when you're writing this. You may not be a people manager, you may not have someone reporting to you, but if you're on the move team, you manage the vendors that handle the move. If you're an engineer, you help manage those vendors that are coming on site to perform maintenance and things like that. So don't forget about those pieces of the puzzle, right? That's part of what you're doing on a daily basis, that make sure that the account is a success. And it's important to keep that in mind too for both people managers and other team members that have the opportunity to manage vendors as well. So,
that's great. And Brandon, I'll go to next along the same lines around people management, and for especially any new people managers who are new to JLL this year or just new to people management, if you completed the Best People Manager Training Series, the first that is called Achieving Results Through Others. So can you talk about how a manager refers to teams, like Paige talked earlier about metrics and work order completion time, and a manager is not completing work orders him or herself per se, but how does a manager then address achieving those metrics with their team?
Well, a couple, right? I mean, Coley touched on it. I mean, we're managing through the web of others, right? So, it's a vision. It's our responsibility as managers to set vision, to set the objectives, to make sure the team understands them. And then the execution is obviously then, left to those, to the individual contributor, if you will. But, today we're accountable for those goals being met, teams being met. So we definitely, need to credit, and we're obviously all going to, there's a negative impact that's going to reflect on the manager as well. So don't feel shy, I guess is what I'm saying, because at the end of the day, you are accountable for the tools. One of the things that I would say, just to kind of add on to what Paige and that is, manager, sometimes your team that you're reviewing, your direct report may not touch on an accomplishment of theirs. So frequently I will add into the comment box if they've gotten something, because just in the spirit of us talking about permanent record, I think it's positive and negative. We need to be making sure that we're giving everybody full credit for the work that's being done. So don't. I guess my point there is, as a manager, if something significant has been forgotten or not documented, or the individual contributor didn't take full credit, or they didn't, put things in the proper context, in your management comments, because that's, you're part of this whole, the whole process itself is about this give and take of going back and forth between manager and the direct report. So let's make sure that full context is accurate. So just, to I guess button up this, Catherine, managers by default, get being the head coach, right, of a football or sports team. You not to deserve all the praise, and you may not deserve all the criticism that come your way, but at the end of the day, you're accountable for the team. So I would put it best, certainly you don't feel, take credit for that, but also make sure that we're giving credit back to our teammates appropriate.
So question for the panelists before we go open Q&A as we talk in the next few minutes. And this is going to go to Paige. And we started to touch on it a little bit, but for employees, what should they keep in mind for as they go into 2017? They write this as self-assessment, and then throughout the year, what kinds of things should they be doing? Lily talked about keeping an email file. What other things can they do to keep track of these things so it's not such a big ordeal at the end of the year?
Yeah, it's definitely one of these best practices. I think everyone always says, oh, I'm going to keep a list of all my accomplishments as I go throughout the year, and then they get to their mid-year review and they go, where was that list that I meant to get started on, right? So, so whether it's OneNote, whether it's Excel, whether it's Word, make a best effort to get those captured throughout the year. A really good practice is to keep a copy of your objectives. I know it's a very sort of mobile environment that we live in. If you have a desk that you sit at, somewhere that always keep your objectives posted up. So as you're going throughout your day, you can glance at them and say, hey, there's something that actually specifically applies to one of these objectives. If you keep a notebook, right, like keep a copy of it just like on the inside of the front of your notebook. Whatever you need to do to sort of keep those in front of mind so you can make sure you're capturing them, I think is extremely helpful. And again, I think that the email folder is great because any feedback you get from the client, just there. And you get back from your manager saying, hey, great job on this and there. And Nicole also mentioned rewards and recognition. Anytime you're mentioned in a newsletter or account announcement, save that stuff, and then you can kind of look back at, I think that you'll be surprised when you get to the end of the year really how much you have add into the review and how easy it really does make it. So, yeah, I think that's, in short, the best stuff that you can do.
Exactly. We all often start with good intentions. I myself started with those intentions, and it gets about like, what happened, So that's our main questions, and we're going to open up the line. We've got about 5 minutes left to see if there are any questions in the audience, and we're just bear in mind we're doing this without a formal moderator, so I know everyone's going to end up speaking at once, but if you have any questions.
Catherine, but be sure you can use the chat feature too on the WebEx. It is working, so if you do a chat, you're welcome to send it to everyone. Everyone can see your questions, or to Catherine, the host. And I know we did have a couple questions earlier that came to me, and I think we've actually addressed them. There was a question on the Dress for Success one that we can make sure address it. I'll follow up announcement on that.
Great. Is that there?
Hi, Alicia Hutchinson. I've got a quick question. I went in the other day to try to do my IPMP, and I copied my one from June. Should that be a good starting point, or should we just do a brand new one?
Oh, you want to address that?
Catherine, I just got distracted. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, my name is Hutchinson, and I'm on Capital One account. My question is, when I went to do my IPMP a couple of days ago, I copied one from the summer to really start where I was going to work on for this one. Should I do that, or should I delete that one and start a fresh one from for? That's my question.
Or you're talking about your 2017 agreement?
No, I'm talking about my 2016 agreement.
So you're about your remarks, the remarks that you post in the mid-year self-assessment. You copy those, and you're starting to basically update those for year-end.
Yeah, sorry, I understand. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for repetition, right? A lot of where you're putting mid-year comments in. A lot of times it'll be very, very similar to your year-end comments. So I try to avoid that, right? In my mid-year, I can say, hey, for 6 months, I'm on track to do this. And then in the year-end, I'll say, I actually achieved this. So some of the commentary is very similar, and I think that approach to talking about just kind of cutting and pasting, it could be a good starting point. I want to make sure that you're not repeating the exact same things from your mid-year. You can update the statistics. you can update things that you've done between the mid-year and the year-end process, but don't feel the need to replicate things that you already repeated in your mid-year. That's my view.
Just to add something there, I would just say that. Okay, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brandon. I just want to. This is Natalie from HR. Let's short because I think systematically you've done something you don't want to do. I think the theory is great, right, but systematically you've opened a new performance agreement, and we don't want to do that. We want to go year end to add comments. So system can reference system. Thanks, Brandon. System can be kind of confusing, so I'll shoot you an email and we can connect on it if that works.
They should be two separate comments, one for your mid-year, one for your year-end. So,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any questions on the phone?
Hi, this is Adriana. I have a question with regards to how we address missing a goal or not achieving a KPI, both from an individual contributor point of view or a manager.
Brandon, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think, we need to be honest and professional and describe why something was accomplished. I mean, here I go into mine, there's something that we didn't get done, and I think we just need to articulate why. So just give it the right context, and that doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily be a negative, in your overall score. But I think, just be honest, transparent, and be specific, just like we would with any goal.
Thanks, Brandon. And one quick question that I received over the chat regarding the section that most people have on their IPMP, which is meet assigned financial targets. And it seems to appear on everyone's IPMP, but most don't have direct fiscal responsibility other than submitting T&E. And this individual was told it's not possible to receive a high score, meaning a 4 or a 5 in that area, because their position doesn't have a lot of financial controls. So the question, how is that fair to have an objective that is impossible to meet? Cole, take a stab at that one. Fully for the meeting, Brandon.
Well, let's first thing I would say is maybe 2017 we changed the goal. I have a conversation with your manager, because I think sometimes you may not be thinking of things that you're contributing to, especially with meeting financials. That we do comes back to either an operating cost or a capital cost or occupancy cost. So what we're doing every day gets back to some sort of financial metric, as well as, also on the JLL side, we're doing things from a revenue standpoint, right, to generate revenue on the account. So I would say, instead of calling it impossible, why don't you have a conversation with your manager first, and some things that come out of that conversation that you can, get credit for or have a think about in terms of responding.
We're actually getting booted out of our conference room here in West Street. Conversation today. There were some other comments coming in. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but we'll post the recording afterward, as well as the follow-up presentation. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for attending the first event of the Women's Business Network Professional Development Committee. Have a great day.
Thank you.